Hi, I'm fmsherrill, and today I'm going to be talking about Incredibles 2. Incredibles 2. 14 years later. So I loved the first film. I thought it was really fun, really inventive. It was a cool spin on superheroes. I love all superheroes. But let's start out with the short. Now, I love shorts. I could do a whole thing on Pixar shorts. They're so fun, they're inventive, and they usually pull your heartstrings, and this short did make me cry. They always do. I think there's like one I don't kind of cry at. And this is the thing with this review. If you loved Incredibles 2 and you don't want to hear anything negative about it, you probably just don't watch the rest of this review. It was a mixed bag for me. I was really excited because Rotten Tomatoes has like 94% positive reviews, and I was like, oh, they did it right. They did it right. And I love sequels when they're done right, because when you love the original, you're just so excited just to get more in that world and be a part of that experience. Let's talk about the short. Writing wise and thematically, I'm not sure what point they were making. I was moved when the son and the mother are on the bed together, both crying, eating those meat buns or whatever. I thought that was a beautiful moment and I cried. But I found a lot of that short kind of disturbing. There's a lot of themes of motherhood and family dynamics that are taking place in the short as well as in the whole film. So symbolically, I guess the meat bun was her real son in real life, because the real son shows up and we're all relieved because we're like, oh, so that was just a symbolic character because she ate him and then cried on the floor because he was dead and she ate him. The whole screen goes black and she realizes the horror of what she's done and she's crying and she can't be consoled by the husband. Disturbing. I think that's disturbing. I think symbolically what you're trying to say is also kind of disturbing. I think the idea that a mother would want to literally shove her son back into the womb through consumption, I think that's kind of dated. I don't think that a lot of mothers have that particular struggle. I've read about it, but it's an interesting thing to showcase in a family animated film. I wasn't expecting it. So there's that. I want to start right off the bat. I already said this, but I was excited to see this film. I really liked the first one. I know in the first one maybe I forgave it and ignored it, but the body dysmorphia, the extreme proportions of the mother, elastic girl, you can see it's the waist is about this big, and it's like, well, she's elastic, she can bend to any shape. So she bends to a really sexual shape, a really unrealistic for every human being, and every little girl watching an animated film has to look at Elastic Girl, who is a mother, Elastic Girl's ass. I saw so much T and A in this film. It was really alarming. I'll have to go back in time and watch the first Incredibles, because I don't remember that much booty in the first one. And then when she's actually talking to a guy who's interviewing her, they animate her boobs jiggling every time she talks and breathes. And I'm like, do I want my nieces and nephews watching a mother figure's boobs jiggle in an animated film? No. It was really disappointing. I'm just getting tired of that stuff. I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, you shouldn't talk so much about that. Like, it's okay, it's just the character design. Actually, you know, it's not fine. It's not anymore. It's 2018, guys. 2018. I think that put a sour taste in my mouth for the rest of the film. There's no reason for a mother of three to have to be portrayed as a super sexual symbol. She can be a hero and she can be a mom. She doesn't have to also be emaciated Barbie. Aside from being a female and having to watch that in my face, there were some really great moments in this film. When the baby battles the raccoon, And I don't think there was a single person in the theater that wasn't just laughing at the ferocity that the baby had, thinking it was the robber from the movie. It was so fun. And when Frozone is over and he's like, what the hell? Like, what? What is going on? And it's like totally like, oh my God, it's a demon child. That was so funny. It was such a realistic reaction. And then the way that Mr. Incredible is just so worn down. He's like, Nami, Cookie Nami. Another fun part was the motorcycle scene, when you see Elastigirl separating the motorcycle into two pieces and kind of coming back together. I also liked a lot of the fight scenes were really fun and dynamic, as well as the home life with the baby and its powers. And then Violet, when Mr. Incredible tries to repair the damage from the guy she likes, and they go to that restaurant and she spits water out of her nose. That was really good. There's a lot of funny parts to this film. Oh yeah, and Edna Emode. I like that she's totally uninterested in the baby, like, you want me to babysit? And then as soon as she sees the baby has powers, she's like, stay with Auntie Edna. That whole thing between those two characters was really well done. Now, a lot of the fight scenes, like I said, were really fun to watch. One that I would warn against if you have children with you is that sort of psychedelic fight scene. You know, they have those flashing electric lights, and then she's being electrocuted, and it's like red electricity making her limbs numb in this part and this part. She's getting punched in the face. And it's really violent and kind of scary. I think I would probably, if I saw that part coming and I was with my niece, I would probably just put her face and be like, honey, just don't watch this part. I think it's a little too intense for kids. It borders on that line. So let's talk about our main antagonist, Screenslaver. Now, the interesting part was a lot of things that character initially had to say, I didn't find particularly wrong. The villain said lines like, superheroes make us weak. I'm like, well, it's an interesting idea. As well as people will trade quality for comfort. I was like, I think I just bought something on Amazon and made that trade before I came to the movie. Now, Screenslaver talks about the ever-passive consumer, making yourself powerless in the process. And that is an interesting theology and idea to me. It's interesting when you have intelligent, philosophical, socio-political remarks like that in a children's film, but also just in general for an antagonist. I couldn't really deny a lot of those remarks. I do feel that as a society we have become complacent, and I myself in a lot of ways have become complacent in certain areas. It's not something that is outside the imagination of human condition. And I like when they bring a certain amount of reality to a villain. Now, these are kind of heavier realities to bring to a villain in a children's film. That was a choice. I'm not sure it was the right one. I liked it because I'm an adult and I can enjoy those kinds of things. What I didn't like was that it turned out to be a female. I thought that was an interesting choice because they finally have a superhero movie and they make a big point that this is the mother stepping forward, like a female superhero, and then, oh, but now we have to have a female villain. It was almost like the female superhero can't fight the male villain. They do something similar in Zootopia, but in Zootopia, I actually care about the antagonist. That antagonist is political based, talking about, I'm tired of being on the bottom, we have to rise up, even if it means becoming violent and crazy. And that's a similar theme for the Screenslaver. I didn't mind it in Zootopia, and I minded it here. Your hero is only as strong as your villain. That's a thing they say in writing all the time. Your antagonist is only as strong as your protagonist, and vice versa. It's like a yin and yang, two sides that make a really good film. Now, the first Incredibles, you have a fanboy turned villain. And we get to see his backstory, and I actually end up feeling for him a little bit. He idolized Mr. Incredible. And you see his breaking point and him going in his room and ripping his posters as a little boy. And it kind of touches you a little bit because every one of us has had somebody that was a hero that we looked up to. And then as growing as adults, we either find out that that wasn't the case, or we can still idolize them. So we can associate. Now, the problem for me in this film is that I did not associate with the villain. When I found out it was her, I wasn't really surprised because she's kind of moody and off-putting the whole film, and surprise, I'm the villain. And also her reasoning makes sense here, but I didn't feel it here. And good writing is gonna move this ticker right here. Because we have to have an intellectual experience, of course, but also an emotional one to have the full ride. So why didn't this set off? And the difference is, in the first Incredibles, we see him, the villain, break down. We see him as a kid. We see him hurt and suffer, and that turned to rage. Do we see her as a little kid? We see a brief moment where her dad gets killed and she's talking about it. Now, show don't tell. She's talking about it with Elastigirl when Elastigirl is chained up. Now, it's not making us feel for the villain because we like Elastigirl and she's freezing over there, and she's just talking to her on the other side of a glass. There's no connection. Now, if we had heard the previous story about how her parents had died, but then when she's retelling it to Elastigirl, in that moment we go back in time and we realize she's older than her brother. Her brother was just a baby, but she was a kid. And we see her parents get gunned down waiting for a hero, and she has that moment. So if we see that and we have a similar realization where she turns from that love into hate, we understand the turning. Every Batman movie shows him seeing his parents gunned down. That trauma shifts his whole life. He becomes a vigilante hero. And we understand, we get it, we don't question it, we feel it. Now with her, if we saw her see it and she shifts to a vigilante villain, we also get it, we understand it. But we don't see her turnaround. We don't see the connection other than a verbal one that she says she made for her hate of heroes, but we don't actually see it. It's like somebody tells you, I hurt my arm on the phone, and you're like, oh yeah, that sucks, I'm sorry you hurt your arm. Or they come over to your house and they show you the stitches and you're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry you hurt your arm. It's human nature. We're more empathetic and compassionate if we actually see it. That's the visual medium of movies. So for me, the main shortcomings in this film were the sexualization of a mother of three. Not cool with that. Some of the more adult things that are questionable to be in a child's film, and the miss for the antagonist. We don't really care about her because they didn't connect us to that pain and that moment in a villain. That's over here. Over here, I still think it's worth watching because it had a lot of fun moments, a lot of funny moments. We still love these characters from the first Incredibles. This unfortunately is a sequel that you kind of have to sift, and knowing that these are the faults, maybe you can kind of then just enjoy the rest. I was really off put by the misses, and I think if I watch it again I can know that those are coming and really just enjoy the places where it did land on its feet, which is the comedy and a lot of the great animation that was in the fight scenes and a lot of the other cool looking scenes. So that's my review for this time. If you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe below. And I will see you next time.